Good morning, Imagine, and happy Valentine's Day. I know that for everyone who hears that word, who is reminded of what today is, it could bring different emotions depending on where you're at. And I pray, Imagine, that through our morning together, or if you are watching this at another time during the day, I pray that you would be grounded in God's comfort, in God's love, in God's peace beyond understanding. I pray, Imagine Church, in our morning together today, that you would know by you showing up and logging on, whether it's your first or 10th or 20th or whatever number time that it is, I pray that that would remind you, that you'd hear these words and know truly how courageous you are and how you haven't closed off your heart, how you are still loving, how you are still showing up, how your heart is still open to God and is tender. And I pray that you'd be proud of that. And so I'm privileged. I don't know who's logging on right now. I don't get to see the names, but I feel privileged to be able to share this space with you, whoever that is that I'm speaking to this morning. I pray that through our worship, that these songs that you hear wouldn't just be these empty melodies, but you would find life, you would find comfort, you would find joy and celebration in the lyrics. I pray that you would find yourself in the sermon that is going to be spoken in a little bit. Not only would you find yourself in the sermon, but more importantly, you would see God through it all. And as you see God through it all, you would see your place in His story. A story that is good, a story that is redemptive, a story that is of celebration, a story that never forgets, and most importantly, a story that reminds us that we always belong. And so I'm excited to move forward together in our morning today.
Surrender, I need you now. surrender. I need you now. Hold my heart now and forever. My soul cries out. Once I was broken. You love my whole heart. Sin has no hold on me. Grace holds me now. Healed and forgiven. Look where my chains are now. Death has no hold on me. Grace holds the ground. Grace holds me now. Grace holds me now. Grace holds me now. Grace holds me now. I've carried a burden too long on my own. I wasn't created to bear it alone. I hear your invitation to let it all go, and I see it now. I'm laying it down, and I know that I need you. I run to the Father, I fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend. So I run to the Father again and again and again and again. Oh, oh, oh.
All right. Just want to start off right away by saying happy Valentine's Day to, let me double check, it's just, wait, Saturday? Okay, yeah. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody who's tuning in right now. I'm recording this on Friday, but we all watch this together on Sunday. So happy Valentine's Day. And when we think about Valentine's Day, obviously there's the commercial, romantic sort of, and even like some sort of kitschy dynamics to it. But any reason to remember and celebrate the centrality of love in this world is a good thing. Not just romantic love, but any time to remember that love is the deepest structure of our physical and spiritual universe, that is always a good thing. So, candies, gifts, flowers, dinners, I love it all. I think it's all good stuff. I don't care how corny or cheesy it is. Anything that reminds us to affirm the goodness of those around us gives us the potential to be in the flow of the Spirit of God in this world in a profound way. And actually, speaking of cheesy, I'm going to start off with a couple funny and cheesy Valentine's Day jokes, and then I'm going to tell you about who the real Saint Valentine was. So, the first joke. Why didn't the skeleton want to send any Valentine's Day cards? Because his heart wasn't in it. Because he's a skeleton. Here's the second one. How can you tell when a squirrel is in love? I think about that. How can you tell when a squirrel is in love? It's because he goes nuts. All right? So happy Valentine's Day. That sort of takes us into the cheesiness, the sort of kitschy part of the whole thing, even though I love it. Now let's talk about the real Saint Valentine, right? Every few years, I like to remind people who Saint Valentine was, because he was a saint in the history of the church. So Saint Valentine was a priest in Rome in the 3rd century who was brutally executed. Happy Valentine's Day. There was this sort of tyrant reigning, Claudius II, and at that time the Roman Empire was persecuting the church. They were sort of this oppressive social and political force. The church was this fringe group still on the margins who they saw as a threat and as subversive and as dangerous. So Saint Valentine would help Christians escape persecution, and then he would illegally marry Christian couples without the emperor knowing. How sick is that? And then he was condemned when he kept telling the emperor the story of Jesus. So imagine telling a king, you keep on telling an insecure, power-hungry king about who the real king is. You're going to have problems. So he was condemned and he was thrown in jail. And then St. Valentine became friends with the daughter of his captor. And just before he was executed, allegedly, Valentine healed the daughter of the jailer who was in charge of watching him by restoring her sight. And then, because he was friends with her and he healed her, on the day he was executed, he left a note for the daughter he healed and signed it, "Your Valentine." Which, according to stories and history, is where we get those Valentine's Day card ideas from. So, here's the interesting thing about that. Saint Valentine's legacy was not an expression of romantic love at all. It was an expression of the love that came through a man who was single and willing to risk his life for the sake of others. See, Valentine's Day, about him, is actually about the creativity and love of a single person who knew how much power they had to affect the world around them. But I guess you could say it also was about romantic love, because the people this man was helping were also risking their lives getting married on the edges illegally for the sake of love. They were willing to fight for love when it was difficult to love. So I actually think it's amazing, because you could say Valentine's Day is about romantic love. but it's also about the power of singleness and the creativity and love of those who are single to impact this world around us for good. Isn't that an amazing story, a different way to frame Valentine's Day? Right? I want to look at a couple of views of marriage, right? We talked about Valentine's Day. Let's talk a little bit about marriage and singleness on this day, where it's so easy to think it's only for people who are in love romantically or married or in a relationship or whatever. So here's a couple scriptures about marriage, couple from Jesus, couple things he said, a couple from Paul, and then I will tease some things out of that. Mark 10:9, Jesus said, "What therefore God has joined together, let no man separate," right? Perhaps calling us back to the Genesis story, bringing people together into one flesh. Genesis 2:24, "Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." So there is within this recognition and celebration of marriage and union. Awesome. But that's not all that's said. Matthew 19:10 through 12. This is also the words of Jesus. The disciples said to him, "But if this is the situation between a husband and wife, it is better not to marry," right? They were talking about the issues people can have in marriage. Jesus replied, "Not everyone can accept this word," meaning of singleness, not being married, "but only to those whom it has been given." So Jesus is saying that singleness or celibacy or not being married can actually be a great gift. For there are eunuchs who are born that way, and there are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by others, and there are those who choose to live like eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. He's basically saying there are people for different reasons who aren't going to get married. Then he says the one who can accept this should accept it. He doesn't say feel sorry for them, doesn't ask the church to look down on them as if the fullness of life isn't present because they're not married. Jesus is saying if someone can do that and embrace it as a gift, they should. So there's also a celebration of singleness that comes from Jesus. Here's some words of Paul, 1 Corinthians 7:32 through 35. "I would like you to be free from concern. An unmarried man is concerned about the Lord's affairs, how he can please the Lord. But a married man is concerned about the affairs of this world, how he can please his wife. And his interests are divided. An unmarried woman or virgin is concerned about the Lord's affairs. Her aim is to be devoted to the Lord in both body and spirit. But a married man is concerned about the affairs of this world." But a married woman is concerned about the affairs of this world, how she can please her husband. "I am saying this for your own good, not to restrict you, but that you may live in a right way in an undivided devotion to the Lord." And then Paul goes on to mention, or before that mentions in 1 Corinthians 7:8, that he is also single and unmarried. A couple thoughts. One, Jesus and Paul, both single, unmarried, and I would argue living the fullness of life. But what Paul's saying in that scripture is like, marriage doesn't make your life more simple. He's saying it actually makes it more complex. And that's why when people have this, oftentimes from the atmosphere of the church, people have this view of when you finally get married, everything just clicks and simplifies and just as if it makes life easier. What Paul is saying is, no, it actually makes your life more complex. And there's truth to that. Like, the decision-making process in a marriage is more complex than it is when you're single. Do you know why I know that? I'll tell you why. Because married people fight over what cheese they're going to buy in a store. Do you understand that? Do you understand what it's like to be fighting over what cheese to buy while you're in Foodland or Whole Foods or whatever? Hey babe, what cheese do you want? I don't know. I honestly don't care. I know, but look, like there's the blue, and then there's like this, this truffle brie. Like which one do you want? I honestly, babe, I'm cool. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Well, just choose one. Okay. the blue. Really? You want the blue? Because I was thinking the brie. But I mean, if you want the blue, I guess we'll have to get it. No, I didn't. I just said that because you wanted me to say something. No, well, you want the blue now. I'm not going to be happy with the brie because you fight over anything when you're married, right? It's hilarious afterwards, and in the moment, it's not hilarious. But what they show us is there is a gift in singleness. There's a gift in marriage. I always tell people, singleness is limiting and expanding in unique ways, and marriage is limiting and expanding in unique ways. The point of what Jesus and Paul were talking about is living a life with an undivided heart, in tune with God and for the sake of others. You can do that when you're single, and you can do that when you're married. There are things about being single that might make it difficult sometimes. There's things about being married that might make it difficult to live with that undivided sense of alignment. At times, you can live wholeheartedly either way. So how do we go from Jesus and Paul celebrating the freedom of singleness because of how much space it creates for connecting with God and loving this world, to a church culture in the United States that so often views marriage as the highest achievement and somehow sees singleness as less valuable or less whole? I would say this: the dominant view of marriage in the United States of America has more to do with Western middle class values than it does with Jesus's vision. It is more the church's view of marriage over the time is more reflective of Western middle class, like family values in the James Dobson sense of the word, if anyone knows what that is. That is more of a Western nuclear middle class sort of bourgeois version of marriage than it has to do with the biblical vision of two people coming together, but actually all of humanity coming together towards oneness. So let me just say a couple things about singleness and about marriage. The part of the culture that says you are not complete until you are married is not biblical. The part of the culture that treats unmarried people as second-class Christians is not biblical. The part of the culture that acts like you cannot experience the fullness of life when you are single is not biblical. The part of the culture that sees single people as somehow missing something in the core of their being is not biblical. Can you imagine that same culture, those same people being like, oh, if only Mother Teresa had a husband, then she really would have found her voice. Right? If only Saint Francis got married, then he could have made an impact on this world, right? If only Oprah got married. I know she's got Stedman. I don't exactly understand that relationship, but if only Oprah was married, then she could make a couple waves in this world. And Jesus, if only Jesus was married, if only Paul was married, the hero, the culture that makes single people feel like they're missing something core to who they are is not biblical. I remember this time, 2000, this time not that old, 2 years ago, your esteemed pastor and friend Larry and I were getting ready this Sunday night. The wrap-up party for Powwow Hawaii was going to be the Eminem and Logic concert at the stadium. So 2 years ago, your pastors were getting ready to go to that concert. I saw Eminem for the first time when I was 15 at the Up in Smoke tour with like Snoop and Dre and Ice Cube and everybody else. Then virtually 20 years later, I was seeing him again out here. Side note, isn't it crazy now to think about the fact that we used to go to concerts, like indoor or outdoor? Thousands of people pushed up against each other, just sweaty and panting and breathing and spraying out of their mouth as they sing and shout like right next to each other. It's like a part of us is like, that is so irresponsible and dangerous. And yet, how many of you are looking forward to the day we can do that again? But I remember we're at the show and it was sick. We had great seats and everybody was hyped, and there were songs even from Logic that move you, and people are dancing and then perhaps crying and shouting, and the whole thing was moving. And you know, there's the cool thing about shows is like there's like a unity of like a group sort of collective mind thing that happens. It's so powerful. And when I look back at that moment, I'm like, Logic, Eminem, Skylar Grey, all in that moment, all single, none were married. This unforgettable musical and artistic experience was put on by a group of people that were all single. They show us the power of a single life that is lived with courage and creativity, just like St. Valentine. You don't have to wait for anyone to be fully alive. Don't miss the moment of your life when all of this creative potential is waiting to be actualized because you think you need to be in a relationship to experience the fullness of life, because you're not going to get these moments back. Another person does not define you. The Spirit of God defines you. You have when you're single, you have space to experiment with love and risk and creativity and vocation, to learn what deep friendship is, to give yourself in sacrificial love, to think about what it means to work for justice, to understand what it means to give your life fully. There is a unique power in a single life that is lived with courage and creativity. Do not miss that. Jesus showed us what that was like. Paul showed us what that was like. Do not miss the power of your life because you think, or you're supposed to, or the culture or the church has convinced you need somebody else to be whole. The scriptures give us this imagination of the power of a single life that is undivided with God and with love for the world. Don't miss out on that. And now that we've talked about singleness, I do want to talk also about marriage. Rom-coms are some of the most dangerous pieces of art that exist. All right, I said it. They are dangerous. And here's why. Rom-coms always end at the beginning. I don't care if you heard me say that before, I'm going to say it again. Rom-coms end at what's really the beginning, right? Meet, problems, are they going to get back together? They get back together. So what's that, a year, 2 years in? That's the beginning of the journey. That's not the end. That's where the journey together actually starts. So when the movie ends with this big hugging embrace in the rain and everyone's all moved, I'm like, you know what they should do? They should end it with them not speaking to each other while they're doing laundry because they just got in a fight. That's would give you more of an image of it. And this is what it might feel like sometimes 7 years later, but they don't show that in the movies, do they? Why do weddings move us so much, right? It's easy to be, cynical about marriage today. Divorce rates, church leaders, cheating, sex scandals, even from religious leaders, friends, pastors, it's like everybody, right? It's easy to be cynical about marriage. But weddings still have a tendency to move people at this deep universal level, right? It's like there's something just right about it. Sometimes even the most cynical people can still be moved during the wedding ceremony. It's like there's something within us that sees two people coming together, and something within us is just like, yes, this connection, this commitment, there's something just true about life here. Deuteronomy 6:4-9 is called the Shema. It's one of the most important prayers in the Jewish tradition. I'm going to read it. Verse 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk on the road. When you lie down and when you get up, tie them as symbols on your hands, bind them on your foreheads, write them on the doorframes of your houses and on your gates. Jewish people would say this prayer, the Shema, morning and evening. It was the first prayer kids would ever learn, because this prayer of oneness in God expresses the main spiritual and social vision that Jewish people had for life. The Lord our God is one. And this is all about moving towards unity. Think about that. Thousands of years of people praying and dreaming for oneness. Built into this desire, built into this prayer is a desire for oneness. Everything that is wrong will be made right. That which is broken can be healed. That which is separate can be put back together. There's a connection and a oneness that is bigger than ourselves. Human beings long to see a world that is one, and they long to see relationships that last. When a relationship lasts, it helps us believe in oneness. When these people become one, it helps us believe other things can connect and become one. This is why the world needs marriages, good marriages, shining marriages, marriages that shine, provide a ray of light that's a hope, pointing people to the possibility that oneness, connection, and faithfulness is possible. That's why marriage can become so powerful for this world and so good when you're a part of it as well. I think I shared this story, or I know I shared this story years ago, and I want to share it again. It's a former professor of mine at Fuller named John Goldingay, who's one of the leading Old Testament scholars on the entire planet. This guy writes books like this thick over and over and over again. And he's originally from England. He's a British dude. And his wife was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis when they were engaged to be married. And he said, at the very beginning, I could have gotten out of it. We weren't even engaged, but it was too late because we were already committed to each other. We were in love with each other. To give up on that would have been not to be me, to deny the reality, to go back on being me, because I'd fallen in love with her and I'd made a commitment to her. See, multiple sclerosis is this slow process that can take away eventually a person's ability to speak. It can take away their motor skills. It can take away their ability to really move at all. And about 20 years into their marriage, she completely lost the ability to speak and would be in a wheelchair for the rest of her life. And he's saying how her presence was so calming for people. Other people would come just to sit with her in silence at times. Even though 20 years into their marriage, his wife no longer spoke, was in a wheelchair, and by the end of her life was just hunched over in a wheelchair, unable to communicate verbally, unable to really move, he stayed married to her for 43 years until she passed away. Much of which, actually the majority of the marriage, she was unable to speak, walk, or do anything for herself. And what was crazy was during this time, I would hear stories from former students of his, other professors of mine, who would say they would see Dr. John Goldingay, right, this Old Testament sort of respected professor, take his wife to concerts all over Los Angeles. So here's this old British dude, you know, I know he loved Coldplay, or he'd go see John Mayer or whatever, so he'd be at these shows just like, or however 55-year-old British dudes dance. And they would see him come in just rocking out, having the greatest time, and right in front of him would be his wife, hunched over in her wheelchair, not moving, still married, still enjoying that concert together. And the people who knew him said it was like everything he taught came to life because of who he was in that marriage. That's what fighting for a marriage looks like. That's what oneness can look like. That's what fighting for your marriage, fighting for oneness, sticking around. And it shows how it can give hope to the rest of the world and helps people believe that good things can last and oneness and faithfulness is actually possible. So imagine, church, would you hear this today on Valentine's Day? Valentine's Day is about the power of singleness and the hope of marriage. So would this day give you the permission and the freedom to live fully into the power of your singleness? And would it challenge and inspire you if you're married or in a relationship to live into the hope of fighting for that oneness and staying together?
Take me back to the garden. Lead me back to the moment I heard your voice. Take me back to communion. Lead me back to the moment I saw your face. And it was all so simple. You're so easy to love. And no space between us. You're so easy to trust. 'Cause you are closer, closer than my skin. And you are in the air I'm breathing. Here's where the dead things come back to living. I feel my heart beating again. And it feels so good to know you are my friend. This is the garden, here in the place that finds you close. This is communion, here in the place I'm fully known. And it was all so simple. You're so easy to love. No space between us. You're so easy to trust. 'Cause you are closer, closer than my skin. And you are in the air I'm breathing. Here's where the dead things come back to living. I feel my heart beating again. And it feels so good to know you are my friend. This is where we're meant to be. Me and you and you and me. I don't have to prove a thing. You've already approved of me. This is where I'm meant to be. Me and you and me. And I don't have to prove a thing. You've already approved of me. Closer, closer than my skin. You are in the air I'm breathing. back to living. I feel my heart beating again. And it feels so good to know you are my friend. And it feels so good to know you are my friend. And it feels so good to know you are my friend. Through it all, my eyes are on you. Through it all, it is well. Through it all, my eyes are on you. It is well. It is well. So let go, my soul, and trust in Him. The waves and winds still know His name. So let go, my soul, and trust in Him. Waves and winds still know His name. So let go, my soul, and trust in Him. The waves and winds still know His name. So let go, my soul, and trust in Him. The waves and winds still know His name. Waves and winds still know His name. Waves and winds still know His name. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well. It is well with my soul. 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 It is well. It is well with my soul. It is well. It is well with my
What a beautiful Sunday morning that was together. Thank you to our worship crew for the beautiful songs that have such powerful lyrics that we were able to share and sing alongside together this morning. I just loved that sermon from Kevin, that incredible reminder of the power in singleness and the hope to be found in marriage. And I love that, how here you have these different spaces that we find ourselves in, and yet as a church in Imagine, there's a place for everyone to belong. And I pray, Imagine, that you would know that Imagine is a place where everyone can belong. There's a seat at the table for everyone. There's a space to connect, to join in, to be part of this beautiful kingdom narrative that is of good news and is of celebration, marked by love and joy. And so I want to invite you, Imagine, on this Valentine's Day, to allow yourself to be known and to be cared for by this community. If you're new to this church, we would love to hear from you. Would love to hear who you are, how you heard about us, a little bit about your journey and where you're at now. We also want to invite you, Imagine, if you have been journeying for some time and have wanted to grow closer but didn't know how, or were plugged in before but got caught up with life, we want to be in touch with you. Whether that's joining in another Living Rooms. Living Rooms is our way of meeting beyond just a Sunday, connecting with each other while growing close to God through a virtual platform that meets every other week or so, and also by serving and volunteering at our next drive-in experience at the end of this month. And so if any of those three things that I just described kind of stirred something, or you felt something, you're like, ugh, please, I don't want to acknowledge this feeling, I invite you to courageously reach out. And I look forward to connecting with you. And you can do so by emailing us at info@imaginehi.org. Again, that's emailing us at info@imaginehi.org, or direct messaging us on our Instagram at imaginehi. Again, that's at imaginehi. And so, Imagine Church, on this Valentine's Day, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. And may the Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. And the community of Imagine says, Amen.